All right, everyone, good morning. My name is Paola Gomez, and I will present 3 powerful approaches to develop 21st century skills. Okay, these are the 4 C's of the 21st century skills, right? And what I have done is pick 3 approaches that are really useful for the EFL classroom or for teaching any content subject in English. And I think that the 3 approaches that I have focused on, mainly framing critical thinking, probably because I have been teaching theory of knowledge and critical thinking both in English and Spanish for like 16 years. So over here, you will find the 4 C's, which are 4 different classifications of skills for the 21st century, and they have different subclassifications. Among the critical thinking soft skills that students should develop to succeed in a world that we don't know yet is information and discovery. It's like how to handle information and how to find new information. Also, how to interpret and how to analyze this information to determine if it is reliable or not. To use their critical thinking skills, their reasoning, the high abstract skills cognitively to be able to process this information and build their own arguments. In other words, develop their own criteria and judgment. Most importantly, to solve real life problems of any kind, integrate their knowledge, the disciplinary knowledge that they have into solving that problem. And the last one is being able to understand the world around them and that everything around is a system. All right, so our first approach is concept-based learning. Concept-based learning is an approach proposed by Eileen Erickson that works in parallel with the IB. She proposed that education and knowledge these days shouldn't be the way in which it is traditionally conceived, like only skills and facts. She proposed that knowledge is more than that, but that knowledge is facts, skills, concepts that unite all the disciplines and that go beyond. They go to generalizations, principles, and theories that explain large aspects of reality that are complex. Now, a benefit of concept-based learning is that it is super helpful to understand that we need kids to be able to solve problems of any kind. And it is terrible to go to their heads, and if they find a problem in engineering, for example, they should not only recur to physics, but to physics, mathematics, maybe biology, maybe chemistry. So concept-based learning helps that, to understand that knowledge is integrated and not segmented. I have an example here of the structure of knowledge proposed by Lynn Erickson. She conceives knowledge based on this structure. Knowledge is the facts that students learn. These facts are framed within a topic, whatever it is, indistinctive of the subject. Then this knowledge goes above and they start to get integrated into concepts. It's like, for example, if you learn economics and biology, you use, of course, facts that are related to each of these subjects, but then you move on to different topics in the subject, and then you move to the concept of change. It's like change is a concept that unites those 2 disciplines, those 2 areas, and they help to see that change is the same thing, but it looks differently into different disciplines. And then, of course, going above to generalizations about how changes occur and what are the triggers for change in different disciplines into large theories. I have an example over here. This is the structure of knowledge in the primary years program of the IAB organization. And it begins with facts about families that students generate themselves. And then they move on to the topic of my family. And the concepts over here there are many examples of concepts. One is solidarity and collaboration, which is a concept that can connect different disciplines. And it goes beyond into generalizations. Families are alike, but they can also be different. Or families cooperate to get things done, into the theoretical part, which is human beings have the tendency to get united. that would be the theory above it all. We move on. And our next approach is visible thinking. I'm totally sure that many of you have already heard about visible thinking before. It was created by the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and its name is like self understandable, because the idea is to make thinking visible. And there are different visible thinking routines, but I have gathered the three that seem to be the most useful. But I invite you to go to the internet and Google. There is a toolbox that Harvard has that compiles all the visible thinking routines that have different purposes, and they really demonstrate whether our students are in the level that we want them to be. If we're reaching synthesis or analysis or evaluation, we can evidence it in the visible thinking that we decide to implement in our classes. Okay, I have chosen compass points, see, think, wonder, parts, people, and interactions. Something that I love about these visible thinking routines is that they are self-explanatory, and they have a very good guide on how to implement it, and also questions that work as an even better guide for students. So for whatever the topic or subject you want to implement them in, they're really useful. So the compass points, like in a compass, as you can see here, north, south, east, or west. In the north, you have the needs. In the south, you have suggestions. In the west, you have worries. And on the east, you have what excites students. And this can be about anything. There are tiny examples over here. Like, I need to improve my vocabulary, or I'm excited that we're going on a field trip. My suggestion is to have lockers, or I'm worried about breaking up with my friends. So those are authentic demonstrations of student thinking. Then we have see, think, wonder. It also has guiding questions. It also has guiding questions like, what do you see? What do you think is going on? What it makes you wonder? And I love this one particularly because it goes from description to analysis and inference. And then we have parts, people, and interactions that starts with description once again. It goes to like decomposing into the elements, which in this case are people, right? There will always be people because it's part of the routine. It's parts, people, interactions. And then the interactions is like, how do the parts and the people interact with one another? So they find the links, the relation, and have to infer how things work. Now, these visible thinking routines are very useful in different parts, in totally different parts of the teaching process, either in the introduction or in the development or in the productive part, depending on what the objectives of your class are, right? As I said, you can find more of these visible thinking routines in the Harvard website for the Project Zero. Okay, something else, like another powerful, super powerful approach to develop 21st century skills, especially critical thinking, is systemic thinking, proposed by Rodriguez. He said that knowledge is better understood when we teach our students to think as whether everything is part of a system. And you can see this is like a metaphor. It's like an iceberg. And on the top of the iceberg, you have the events. That is like the first part. So you go from top to bottom. So whatever happens in reality could be there. We have a simple example here, like catching a cold. It could be the COVID. It could be anything, actually. It's like, what happened? So you react and you say, oh, okay, this is what happened. Then you move below to patterns and trends. When something is a pattern, it is easy to anticipate it. Or if you identify a tendency, you can also foresee what's going to happen, right? It says, I've been catching more colds when sleeping less. But it can be anything, as I said. It's like, you can ask even your youngest students, it's like, you got good grades. That's what happened. What is a pattern that determines that you got good grades? And you go, I've been going to bed early, and I have been waking up early, and I have been keeping my agenda in place, for example. And then you go below, like, what is the structure underneath? Okay, my mom has been helping me out to organize my time. My teachers have been giving me feedback, and I have been asking my friends for help, and I am keeping more attention on my agenda. And then you go even lower to mental models. It's like, what assumptions, beliefs, and values do people hold about the system? It's like, with this result, I have realized that I have the belief that making good management of my time will give me good results. This systemic thinking, I think it's extremely important because it helps you take students to high levels in Bloom's taxonomy, as so the other approaches that I have presented. I'm going to move on. It is very important to understand that to implement systemic thinking, graphic organizers are extremely important. We have some examples here, right? As you can see, the types of system mapping, we can go from this to the iceberg. It's always like breaking them in parts. For example, the behavior over time graphs. It's like you can have your students working on the COVID in this chart, right? And comparing maybe the Spanish flu with the COVID. And you can also keep using the iceberg or going for causal loops like people do not wear a mask, they get contagious again, or people are gathering again without restrictions, so they're going to get contagious again. So those are two really good examples. And I think I'm going to be stopped, right, Rob?